Hello, this is Silas. This is going to be the first conversation in this series about spanking children and how it is child abuse. So, some of this is going to start with just me going through conversations I've had with people. This is one of the topics that, when it comes up online, I actually check to see if somebody's willing to actually discuss this and actually break down their thought process behind their defense of it or why they do it. And I actually take time to actually do that. And some of these situations have been very fruitful. And I think by sharing this information, I've actually seen these conversations before, and they helped me work through some of the issues I had with it and getting to understand how negative of a thing spanking is, child abuse is, which to me kind of shows how negative it is, the fact that it takes a lot of these conversations in some cases and a lot of this information to actually make you realize it breaks you down to a point where you accept some of these reasoning. And now that I look through some of these, I think, wow, how could someone ever accept these? But sometimes actually just seeing that, you never know which conversation or how many times you have to hear something before it's like it clicks and you say, oh yeah, that's actually completely wrong. That's not at all what I should have been defending. Okay, so here it goes. This is a very common one. The guy said, I was spanked and I turned out okay. So when they said this, I was thinking there was no frame of reference to see how you'd have turned out if you had not been spanked. I'm not saying that the person wasn't okay in this situation, but when they say this, it's very easy to dispute that anything that's okay about them, if there was a way to objectively say, yes, this person's okay versus these other people, then that happened despite the spanking, not due to it. The next rationalization was, it's not about hurting the child, it's about shocking the child. I agree that if given the option of putting somebody in a dark room and randomly hitting them, versus calmly explaining what has happened and then saying, because you did X, Y, I'm going to hit you, and then hitting them, that second option is preferable, sure. But in a parent-child situation, what is a sufficient explanation to say that, yes, this level of pain reduction, it's not going to be 5 punches to the face, but it's going to be one hit of a stick? How is that sufficient explanation to overcome any of the non-physically aggressive options that you have? What does one imagine that the reasoning to say, yes, I'm going to hit you versus not hitting you is sufficient to give to a child? The next rationalization. Everyone's seen this before. Little 4-year-old Billy trips and falls. He sits up, waits for 5 seconds, and then starts crying. Small children cry when they're startled. The spank is the equivalent of the nip on the ear to a dog to discourage unwanted behavior. Off the break, I completely disagree with this comparison, but let me actually break it down and try to get into this. In these situations when a kid falls down, I've done this a few times where you kind of look where they can't see you looking at them. And I've seen some cases where the child looks up to see if anyone is seeing them. And if no one is looking at them, sometimes they'll just get up and keep going on with what they were doing. Which leads me to think that in some cases, this crying is more calling attention to themselves than from the actual pain or fall that has happened. Now, on to why I completely disagree with the comparison and I think it should just be thrown out. It's somewhat interesting that the person went with a dog for an example. I'm thinking this could come from an inherent need to dehumanize this interaction. If you look at the child as another human being, then you kind of see that what you're doing is wrong. Because even if the kid has a very low cognitive ability, the one nipping the dog's ear, when you're using that example of it's like a dog being nipped in the ear, it's often another dog doing that. So why do they do this? Because they're dogs. They can't reason, they can't talk this out. That's just their natural behavior. So in this situation, they're not saying they actually physically go and nip a dog in the ear when the dog does something wrong. They actually have their own human interaction with that dog usually. So why would they bring in a dog on dog interaction into a man and child interaction or a woman and child interaction? On to the next rationalization. Once kids reach a certain age, revoking their privileges works better and there's no reason to lay a finger on them. It's just about development and the understanding of wants and needs. A 4-year-old won't care if you ground them for a week like a 14-year-old would. To this I answered that these were mere assertions. So what defines a certain age? What defines the caring for grounding? What is the age? Are they 13 and a half and then one day they wake up and then all of a sudden grounding is the thing to do when spanking was the thing to do the week before, or hitting? So you say it's about development and understanding of needs. But how about the parent should understand the child's want to not be hit and meet those needs in a separate, nonviolent way? Now, this conversation I had was with somebody in a philosophy group. And in this philosophy group, it's a free domain radio group. It's by Stefan Molyneux, who advocates for the non-aggression principle, and he has a series called Philosophical Parenting. So at this point, I asked the person if they disagreed with the non-aggression principle. I asked them if they've listened to any of the philosophical parenting series. And I gave them this following, which is not an argument, but this is something I told them that I used to say. I used to say that same thing. I was spanked, but I turned out okay. I was clearly not. And I also used to say that I would use physical punishments and violence. Hitting. I used to say I would hit my kids as a parent. And I used to say that not doing that was part of why society was so bad. I used to be one of those people that like, oh, part of the reason America is going down the drain is because people don't hit their kids anymore. Whereas I would say, yeah, in other cultures or in other places, they hit their kids more, and that's why they have more familial bonds. So I was clearly not okay because there's no defense for that kind of abuse of power in that sort of relationship, let alone one between two relatively equal and capable people. Most people would not accept this in their friends. And the people who do invariably have been through child abuse themselves. It's in language they learn. And after I shared this conversation with this person in this group, they actually said they would take some time and check out that philosophical parenting series, which I personally have worked my way through some of it and have listened to a lot of other things on philosophical parenting and peaceful parenting through the show and other sources. So I'm going to wind this down here. Thanks for listening to the conversation. This is the first one of it. I'm going to work around with this format, possibly get other people to play different parts or use other characters. But this is a topic that's dear to me. I don't have kids, but my nephew's being peacefully parented. I've seen kids who are peacefully parented, and it's something that I really do think would help the world and could help places like developing nations, like somewhere like Kenya, where I've spent some time and seen some of the things I consider to be negative effects from the lack of peaceful parenting. So links in the low bar. Thanks for listening again. I know it's a tougher topic for some, but I think it's one that needs to be discussed. Like, share, and subscribe if you like this. It will be on its own series and playlist. Yeah. Till next time. Bye.